Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it again with another pull value video, except this time it's going to be focused on something that's coming up very soon, and we'll get full details on what's going on because it is the anniversary. And the thing is with Wuthering Waves' anniversaries, we've only had one so far, is that typically a bunch of characters will be available on rerun banners. And this is just an example of the types of banners that we had available on the first anniversary, where of course we had Zoni and Chikona, as well as a bunch of different characters, 5 on each side of the phases, as well as their weapons. And naturally, a lot has shifted in the Wuthering Waves meta since that first anniversary. A lot of new characters have arrived to the roster as well. And our goal for today is to really highlight who the standouts are going to be on the roster so that maybe you can start planning for what's going to happen. Because one thing that's also very apparent with the anniversary is that if you just go ahead, you go into like your store, you know, and you go down to this purchase menu over here, you're probably going to find that, well, let's be entirely honest here, these top-up bonuses are going to reset, and I'm pretty sure there are going to be a abundance of very nice bundles in the store as well. And maybe you're somebody that's going to go ahead, maybe stock up right now on some of these higher value packages, knowing that, you know, you might be a bit of a big spender. So this video obviously isn't geared towards people that are going to be giga free-to-play, just right off the baseline. But with that in mind, right, maybe there are some people in this list that you'll be targeting anyways, because there's going to be a lot of characters available, and the goal for today is to express just how valuable some of the units are. First things first, we're going to get ourselves started over here by just taking a look at all of these different little teams that I have prepared. And you might notice what's going on over here. These are all the different archetypes of units that are currently in the game. And the first one that we have over here are going to be the sustainers, the supports, that whole shebang. And so right off of the bat, there are 2 characters that I'm going to highlight over here, as well as a third that, well, unfortunately, they're going to be here more so as like an honorable or really dishonorable mention, but their status can very easily change. So the first 2 must pulls that I'm going to be talking about right now will of course be both Mornier and Shorekeeper. There's a reason why Shorekeeper and Mornier are at the top of this list, right? Shorekeeper basically is the best overall support in the game. I don't think most people can really debate that, considering the fact that she has a case and a use case in almost every single team, outside of some of the mono ones, right, that have some very strict attribute regulation, like Lupa. And the main sort of goal, or really, like, the main sort of, like, thing that she provides to teams is, of course, her sustaining ability. You can, you know, revive from death a single time if you get KO'd. Those aren't really, like, the main things. The main thing is her massive buff to crit rate, as well as her massive buff to critical damage. You can see over here, for every 0.2% of Shorekeeper's ER, party members gain a bonus to their crit rate, up to 12.5%. And when you get into her Giga Stellar realm, the big one, the massive one, that's very cool, that crit rate buff also includes critical damage. So 12.5% crit rate and 25% critical damage. And the end result of all of this, when you combine it with her outro skill, amplification of 15%, and then of course you combine it with her set, Rejuvenating Glow, that gives a nice little boost to attack over here. You can see 15%. She ends up becoming a very general use case support as long as the DPS is an attack scaler, as she finds herself in almost every meta team in the game, outside of some of the Tomb Break ones. And that's of course why we're going to be weaving in Mornier. You'll frequently see Shorekeeper in lineups like this, right, where you just go, oh, okay, we got SK, Yuno and Augusta, and then you just switch it out, and then you go, oh, it's SK, Chuyan, and Galbrena, and then you'll switch it around even more, and then it'll be SK, Chuyan, and Sigrika, and then you'll change it around even more, and it'll be SK, Jeja, and Carlotta. You kind of get the gist over here. This unit shows up so often and can often be a high tier pick anyways, even if the character is like a Toon one, where you can even run lineups like Shorekeeper, Sanhua, and of course, Luke. So even in 3.x and beyond, where the kits have gotten a little bit more specialized, especially with like Toon Break, you know, Toon Strain, Toon Rupture, all of that, she's still a character that sees a lot of use and can also be a budget option for units like Luke that even have more premium teams. The end result is that, well, pulling Shorekeeper is one of the biggest additions you can have for your account because, as we all know, when it comes to things like the endgame, Whimpering Waste, DPM, all of that, TOA, of course, as well, there's something called a restriction where you can either use the character only a couple of times, 2 times in the TOA. She gets 2 uses in DPM, which is another like massive thing for her. Supports get 2 uses in that game mode, while, you know, other individuals, right, on the roster, they only get 1 use. So she's just inherently more valuable as a support because of the flexibility that she has, and of course the fact that she can be used in almost every single, you know, again, in almost every single game mode. I think she is actually in every single game mode, and that's just going to make her a top pick if you don't have her. The next part that really makes Shorekeeper shine is the fact that you don't even need anything close to her signature for her to be a high performer. You're going to do very well just by having her on a variation. It could be R1, it could be R2, it could be R3. I'm a day 1 player, so I actually have 2 R5 variations, one that I stick on my Verena and then one that I just like have with her. And you know, that has made it so that pulling her signature is one of the most unnecessary things ever. Because in a lot of teams and in a lot of rotations, a variation can oftentimes be better. An R5 variation can be better than her R1 signature. And there's not a lot of units in the game where a 4-star option actually reaches performance levels close to that. So, yeah, you don't need her sig. You can pull it if you really want to increase the damage of your teams, like just that little bit more and make her easier to build. But, because it gives more ER and it lets her reach her crit rate, crit damage caps a lot easier. But there's really no need at all. And I've never had it. I've never needed it. And I've never felt the need to pull it. So, yeah, she's budget friendly as well from that regard. And chances are you probably have a variation somewhere. And a good thing that Kuro should do, and I hope they do it, is have variation on one of these banners, especially the weapon ones. So obviously we've talked a lot about the value of Shorekeeper over here. Now let's start moving on and talk a little bit about the other support that we're going to be seeing over here, and that is going to be Mornier. So Mornier has this sort of like dual purpose bonus over here based off the fact that she is sort of a general support like Shorekeeper, but she's also one of the strongest supports for mono fusion. Remember the restrictions that I talked about before where like Lupa really wants fusion characters on her team? Yeah, Mornier's fusion. And she also comes with a lot of other bonuses as well. First things first, the biggest bonus that she actually has is, she has a higher amount of damage amplification than a Verena, than a Shorekeeper, all of that. 25% all damage amp. However, Mornier has a bit of a weakness over here, and that's the fact that some of her baseline buffs don't actually activate unless she's S1 or you have tuned characters on your team. And the most obvious one over here is this special heavy attack that she has that applies a marker. And as you can see over here, targets affected by Tune Rupture Interfered or Tune Straight Interfered take increased damage from all nearby resonators in the team, up to 40% based off of Mornier's ER. And so if you don't have Tune Rupture and you don't have Tune Strained, or she's not in a fusion team, she's arguably worse than Verena, worse than Bu Ling if they're a resonant skill damage dealer, and of course worse than Shorekeeper as just like a general use case support. However, chances are, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been playing in 3.x and you've pulled any of the DPS characters that are in it, think your Imiths, think your Lukes, think all of that, then you probably will be wanting Mornier because they can easily apply and of course take advantage of this damage bonus over here. Another big thing about Mornier is the fact that she does have a Tune Rupture response. So in Tune Rupture teams, she does end up dealing a nice bonus burst of damage when you tune break them. And of course, when it comes to the Syntony field that she activates whenever she is in her flying mode, well, this is what she does. Continuously restores HP, increases the off-tune build-up rate, and believe me, this is really important for tune break teams because tune break is where a lot of their damage can come from. And then she has a nice little bonus of increasing interruption resistance. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know how interruption resistance in this game works still. Yeah, like I mentioned before, I'm a day 1 player, but it kind of just seems like it's almost like an invisible stat. So I wouldn't put too much value into this because it's not like you can just go in and then just like face tank attacks and never be interrupted on anybody. Big hits will still like stagger you. So it's like, I don't place a lot of value in this personally. It's kind of just like, I consider interruption resistance to be like fluff in this game. Another thing that Mornier is able to do is, you know, a little bit of extra damage on her liberation, increase the amount of defense that she has, and of course, increase the amount of defense that she has and people on her team have. And then she also does like a thing where she, well, that's pretty much it. That's what her ultimate does. And, it deals a decent amount of damage, like 40k outside of mono fusion teams. And then in mono fusion teams, because of the big buffs to fusion damage, he can deal like, you know, 60, 70, 90k, something like that. It's all right, but you know, it's not anything to like write home about. So on the damage dealing side, she's pretty much identical to Shorekeeper, and I wouldn't put too much too much of a focus on that. However, her outro buffs and all of that, she does benefit from these too. So on her second rotation, she does end up dealing a little bit more damage. On the topic of damage, though, I did miss this one part of Shorekeeper. Yeah, this unit does no fucking damage at all. Like, literally none. Absolutely zero. Outside of this one attack that she has on her intro skill, where when you have like the full Stellar Realm open after using all of the intros on your other teammates, you can use this thing called Discernment, and it actually scales quite well with her HP. This can end up dealing like, I don't even know why I said well, it can end up dealing like 45, 50, 60k Spectre damage. So, yeah. These two units that I'm talking about, naturally, they're a lot more focused on their buffs as opposed to their personal damage contribution, but they have some of the best buffs in the game. However, you might be in a state, right, where you're thinking, oh boy, who do I pick between these two? And the answer is very simple, Shorekeeper. And the reason for that is, well, all of these teams, right, that Mornier is used on, and then Mornier is a best in slot 4, Shorekeeper can also just be a substitute on those tuned teams and still get the job done. The unfortunate thing about Mornier is that she can't really be a substitute on Shorekeeper's teams. However, like I mentioned before, Mornier has special interactions with Tune, Strain, or Rupture. And the idea here is very, very, very clear. If you have characters that interact with Tune Breaks, Tune Rupture, or Tune Strain, all of that, then Mornier becomes a very, very, very high value pick. Lene, for example, is a sub DPS that has that ability to apply Tune Strain or to apply Tune Rupture. And these two can actually consist of, these two are actually part of this thing called a wheelchair composition, where you could just go ahead, have like Mornier, Lene, and then like a corpse in the third slot, and you should be able to clear a decent amount of content in the game. However, that basically sort of like conflicts with the idea of using an actual Tune character in the third slot, and well, guess what? Lene and Mornier are best in slots for Amith and Luke. So chances are you're probably not going to use the wheelchair composition if you have either of these two units in the first place, because you're more likely to use, well, Lene and Mornier with these guys. And, well, there are a couple of restrictions on some of these other DPSs, and we'll be talking about them later. So, overall, I would say that Mornier definitely has a lot of potential and should be highly picked if you don't have her, but you have some of these units. And chances are a lot of people pulled Imith, especially after her story quests and all of that goodness. Now, there's a little bit of extra speculation over here that we're going to have to talk about, because naturally, right, that would involve looking at leaks, and we don't do that over here. We made predictions about the type of kits that we're going to expect, right, when it comes to some of the new units that are coming out. So we might as well talk about Mornier's future value in relation to those really, really, really quickly, because it'll also be relevant for the third support on that list. So as we all know, there's been two characters announced for version 3.3. Two characters announced for the anniversary, and they're basically going to be the Zani and the Chakota of this update, and it's actually kind of interesting how much they sort of line up. Hiyuki is obviously looking like a bit of a DPS character, right? While Denya, on the other hand, is a fusion burst applying sub DPS. That's also abundantly clear over here. And one thing when it comes to these two units is that, well, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Hiyuki has resonance modes, much like how Imith has resonance modes. And this is what I'm talking about over here. The fact that she can switch between a Tune team or a fusion burst team. My personal take is that I see Hiyuki being a character that has a Tune team, as well as a Glacio Chafe team. So, with the ability to choose between the two, which I highly predict she's going to have, because again, like, they want to make these anniversary units as sellable as possible, and I think that's one way to do it, make it so that they have, like, two separate teams that they can play. I think that this is something that Kuro Games is going to do. And with that in mind, if Hiyuki has a Tune team, well then guess what? Your Mornier value has just increased tremendously, because as we all know, Mornier is like the best in slot for any team or any DPS really that has interactions with tunes of either type. I personally think that Well, Hiyuki to me looks like it would make more sense for her to be a Toon Strain unit. We'll see. I don't really think she's going to be Toon Rupture though, because it does like it seems like she's meant to deal more damage. And Toon Rupture's damage comes from like the bursts as opposed to like the individual characters. Additionally, when it comes to Denya, I mentioned before that she's going to be like a fusion burst character. I don't really think she's going to have any interactions with the Toon system, because this is my personal take when it comes to her. Chikona also applies dual elements when it comes to her negative statuses. I know some people have, you know, not actually realized that at this point. This unit on her liberation has the ability to apply Arrow Erosion or Spectro Frazzle. And with that in mind, you know, the second half anniversary unit is a negative status applier. I personally think that Denya is going to follow a similar route in her application and actually be a unit that applies Fusion Burst or Glacio Chafe. That's my personal take, because Chikona's a unit that applies both. And so why not Denya being a unit that applies both? As far as I'm concerned, she's stronger than Chikona in lore as well, right? She's a Thanodian Resonator, Aleph 1, all of that goodness. So that could be something that happens too, because our other anniversary unit was a dual negative status applier. I wouldn't be surprised if she's one as well as the second half anniversary unit. You guys know what I mean? Yeah, that seems pretty cool. Oh, good insight, Saint. Yeah, you're truly knowledgeable about this game. Thank you very much, chat. Now, there's been a lot of talk about negative statuses for a reason, right, in relation to value, and that's because of Chisa over here. There is no lie at all when I say this is possibly one of the most dog shit units in the history of the game on release, and she's been one of the most dog shit units in the game for God knows how fucking long. I think she released in November, and she's just been shit for 5 months. I don't understand why they decided to release her so early with such a specific kit and then basically have no real interactions at all with the roster. Because Chisa's only had like one fucking team in the entire history of the game, bro. She's had one team, and that's been this one. Chisa, Chakota, Cardathea. And for her to be better than Arrow Rover in this team, she needs to have her signature. So unless you're willing to like, expend a bunch of resources to just have her be mildly better than like a completely free unit, she's just worse. And that's been the only team she's had for close to, I think at this point, like 5 fucking months. However, we just talked about Denya being a Fusion Burst sub DPS, right? That much is pretty much set in stone because of the new set that was released in 3.1 and the fact that, well, yeah, Denya has Chromatic Foam in her kit. Her value as a support has been basically dog shit compared to these other units, and even compared to like a Verena as well as Arrow Rover, all of that. Buling too, yeah, Buling too, yeah, you can throw her in as well. This is a unit that I think is going to grow exponentially in value as a result of 3.3's new characters. Remember we were talking about Imyth before and the fact that she has 2 resonance modes? A lot of people thought that Imyth in her Fusion Burst mode was going to be very good with Chisa. It's dog shit. Yes, there is pretty much no circumstance in any universe where you want to actually use the Fusion Burst team, and the only way that it's been playable is with an insane amount of shilling, either through WuWa's tokens, either through specific buffs in DPM, or of course, stage buffs in the Tower of Adversity. And Toon Rupture mode has basically been the only way for Imyth to be played. She's incredibly strong in that fashion, but a lot of people want to try out the Fusion Burst team. And so Denya naturally is a character that should come in and make it giga playable and actually meta relevant. So in that vein, if you're looking to pull Denya and you're interested in her and you want that Thanodian Resonator and all of that, right? And you have Imyth, then Chisa naturally grows. However, this also begs the other question. If you already have Imyth's other team with like Lene and Mornier, is it going to be worth pulling Chisa as well as Denya to make the Fusion Burst team work? I don't know. That's a lot of characters to pull when you already have a team that works well for her. But remember what I talked about before when it came to characters like Luke and potentially characters like Hiyuki? Well, remember this, ladies and gentlemen, right? This is Luke's best in slot team. It's also Imyth's best in slot team. And chances are this could also be Hiyuki's best in slot team. So this could be a way for you to still find use for your Imyth without necessarily using up these 2 units on the roster. And remember what I said before about Hiyuki potentially having a Glacio Chafe form as well? Well, then guess what? Glacio Chafe is a negative status, and Chisa as the negative status support, right, that we all know definitely needs more teams, there's potential that Chisa could get straight up 2 more teams in 3.3. And if Denya also has that bonus of applying Glacial Chafe as well, you could have Denya on 2 of Chisa's teams, one where Imeth is the main DPS, and the other where Hiyuki is the main DPS. So that's definitely something that can happen over here. And as you all, as you're all aware when it comes to some of these negative statuses, Glacial Chafe actually functions very similarly to Fusion Burst. You build up a bunch of stacks of it, and then each stack ends up dealing more damage, and then it bursts, or really it chafes and freezes the enemy, and you get a little bit of CC out of there, as well as a burst of damage. So that's kind of like how Chisa's going to operate. She increases the stack limit of all negative statuses, and the only place that we've really seen any benefit to that at all is on the Arrow Erosion teams. But hopefully, we will be seeing 2 more additions to negative statuses on the roster, and if that's the case, and you want to pull them, Chisa might actually be extremely valuable too. But this is the thing. She's got a giant asterisk. Right now, she's possibly the most dog shit pull in the game. And one of the other things that makes her really, really, really bad that I hope Kuro addresses is the fact that when it comes to DPM, or End State Matrix, right, which is easily our hardest game mode, right, Chisa only has 1 energy relative to these units. You can only use her once, while every other support, you get to use her 2 times. And so hopefully Kuro goes ahead and like buffs her by giving her 2 uses. Functionally, it doesn't really matter that Chisa only has 1 because she only has 1 team. Remember, like only the Cardathea one. But if DPM or if End State Matrix, the next version in 3.3, all of that, she only has 1 use. Oh, that shit is kind of fucking cooked, brother. I'm gonna be honest, because Chisa's gonna have multiple teams, but can only be used on one of them, while all of these other supports, right, they can be used on 2. So these 2 are naturally gonna be must pulls. Her, most of all, and then her, depending on whether or not you've got those 2 units, or Mono Fusion, and then her, depending on whether or not you're planning on pulling Denya and Hiyuki, and whether or not you have Ameth. Now it's time for us to switch the conversation over here and talk a little bit about some of those must-pull DPS characters. And the list is going to start off with these 3. And the reason for me choosing these 3 is quite simple. They're pretty much the strongest and most affordable DPSs that we have in the game right now, based off of them being able to use free-to-play teammates, and of course, them just being relatively strong in the meta overall. I don't think many people can actually disagree with these 3 takes, or with these 3 units over here, because they're units that have both premium teams where they can upgrade and do like some crazy damage, but they also have free-to-play lineups where they can function as well, or they use very, very, very popular, very, very, very reusable sub-DPS units. And this is how we're going to start breaking it all down. Frolova over here is naturally a unit that has performed way past her budget levels. And the reason for that is very, very, very simple. As long as you have her signature or a weapon like Stringmaster, she basically can run a free-to-play team that involves units like Rover, or you simply add some additions to her like a Chuyan, or naturally, right, if you really want to get expensive with it, you can put in units like Cantarella in her team. And Frolova's probably biggest value on the roster is the fact that she can make use of this dog shit unit just in case you like accidentally pulled her or you got baited by like thinking that she had any value at all. Frolova is easily the best user of a Rosia on your account. And that alone is like, she can basically take one of the worst pulls in the game, the worst pulls meta-wise, and turn them into a functional unit. She also has, like I mentioned before, free-to-play lineups that feature units like Dan Jin, and of course, Rover in Havoc form 2. You can even run like some goofy Dan Jin Havoc Rover team and actually clear a respectable amount of content in the game if you're willing to practice with them. The one caveat of Frolova is that you really do want to make sure you have some type of 5-star weapon for her. Levian Elegy is obviously the one that she's going to perform the best with, but she also gets a lot of stuff done with, well, good old Stringmaster, and everyone should have a copy of Stringmaster, at least at this point in the game, because it's such a general use case weapon that ends up, well, doing a lot for pretty much any character. Frolova also has one of the easiest to build echo sets in the game, because She only needs 3 pieces of it, and then you can run any kind of like 2 piece as well in the other slots. And the thing is, when it comes to Frolova, she doesn't need any ER, and her set gives her 20% crit rate and 35% echo skill damage bonus, and her main damage type is echo skill. When you combine that with the fact that Hikari over here also gets 20% echo skill damage bonus, you kind of don't actually need resonance skill damage rolls in her kit. You could kind of just have 0 and it doesn't really matter. This is one of the big things, or one of the big reasons why I have echo skill characters valued so highly, because they kind of get all the buffs that they need to their damage to be able to clear. They get all of their buffs from their sets. They get all of their buffs from their 4-cost echoes. And you don't really need to roll anything other than crit rate, crit damage, and maybe attack or something like that. And you're pretty much good to go. That's why I also have Galbraina on here. Because Galbraina has the bonus of also dealing echo skill damage. Of course, also using a set, right, that buffs echo skills as well. And then she also has a 3-cost echo when active in the main slot that buffs echo skills too, and of course gives her general fusion damage bonuses. The main reason why Galbraina is going to be up here, despite the fact that she maybe wants more premium teams than Frolova to get the job done, is very simple. It's because Galbraina has the big bonus of being a pistol user. And pistol users in this game, ladies and gentlemen, have this option available called Phasic Homogenizer. And this thing is just fucking broken. I'm gonna be honest. It's easily the best standard weapon in the game in that it can literally substitute for a pistol DPS character's signature. And when you have the ability to accumulate a fuck ton of standard pulls, like I have just 49 sitting here, Enfield can never, right? I just have 49 sitting here. I don't even know how I got them. I don't even know how I fucking got them. I just have 49 random pulls sitting here. And so naturally, I can get multiple copies of this. And as you can see, as the level of this thing grows in synthesization ranks, the attack bonus in the effect increases as well. And you can see that it has one of the most general attribute damage bonuses in the game. All you need to do is cast a Tomb Break skill. Anyone on the team, and then your character gains this buff for 14 seconds. 30% all attribute damage bonus at R5, but at R1 it's still 20. So it doesn't even scale that well, but it gives a nice little bonus at R1. It also has, in the base stats, crit damage and attack. And you know what that kind of means, right? Every single pistol DPS can just use this instead. And so, while Galbraina definitely wants a bit more of a premium support, think, you know, something like Mono Fusion over here for her to function really well. Or, of course, her having Chu Yan, she makes up for this fact of needing or really wanting premium units more by easily having the best free-to-play weapon option out of all of the characters that are probably going to be available on the anniversary. There's no doubt at all that she's got the best one, because Galbraina deals a split of heavy attack and echo skill damage. And if she's on Phasic Homogenizer, oh, I should probably get a copy of it. Yeah, I should probably get a copy of it. If she's on that Phasic Homogenizer, which gives that all attribute damage bonus, guess what? That means that applies to her echo skill damage as well as her heavy attacks. It just buffs everything. And that's very, very, very good. But like I said before, she kind of relies a bit more on the premium options, but you can also do this, right? Remember how I mentioned that Chu Yan is going to be one of her best partners? Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Chu Yan is also one of Frolova's best partners. And so one of the best decisions that I feel like any player can make, just in terms of having like attribute damage coverage, having a Havoc team that does well, having a Fusion team that does well, is pull Chu Yan and then also pull these characters. And so suddenly you now have a good buffer for Havoc damage, Fusion damage, and if you're really willing to spend, naturally, right, you can also use this character as well for arrow damage. So this guy over here now supports 3 different attribute damage types. Sigrika for arrow, Galbraina with fusion, and then of course, Frolova for Havoc as well. And that is a lot of power, right? That is a lot of flexibility. And that means that you pretty much have anybody you need for any situation to clear all the content in the game. And that's not really a benefit that you can get outside of echo skill teams at the moment, because Chu Yan has the nice ability, right, of just straight up buffing echo skill damage. No attribute requirement, no attribute sort of like limit. It's not like, oh, 50%. It's not like 45% or like 30% fusion and 20% echo skill. It's just echo skill only. So that ends up working pretty damn well. And now for the third character over here that's naturally going to have a fuck ton of value as a DPS, that's going to be Augusta. And one of the reasons for why Augusta is just so good is because A, she obviously functions very well on her signature, but she also functions almost identically with Gion's signature. And if you're a day one player, you probably likely do have Gion's signature. And so if that's the case, you don't even need hers. You could just pull, or not pull, but just like have this one ready to go. And, you know, God forbid, if there's something crazy that happens during the anniversary, right, where you have the option of getting any 1.x character signature for free or something like that, I imagine Kuro could do something like give a 1.x character for free, as well as like their signature or something like that. Then, well, if you have Augusta and then you pull, and then you get like Gion's sig for free or something like that, maybe that's what you can do. However, I'm only saying this because I don't really think Kuro's going to put the 1.x units on these banners. So, like, I don't even know if they'll show up as, like, a pull option on any of these banners. Maybe they'll have 3 that just consist of the 1.x units. Who knows? But I'm pretty sure Kuro's going to prioritize more of the recent releases on these anniversary convenes as opposed to the, you know, kind of, like, more dated units. Unless they're going to run out with, like, a list of, like, massive buffs for them. So, that's my take when it comes to her. Naturally, she's got 2 basically best-in-slot weapon options, but she still can function somewhat okay on the new standard weapon, but I don't really recommend it. It's like all right, but not really that good. Another thing that when it comes to Augusta, and the main reason why she's going to be so high on this value list, is that she's probably one of the best users of a 4-star sub DPS in the game. If you run her with Mortefi on Static Mist, which is also a free buffing pistol, which is going to give her attack, and then you just put Mortefi right on like a Moonlit Cloud set, which buffs attribute damage and attack even more, well then guess what, guys? Mortefi and Augusta, where Augusta has some type of signature weapon, either Gion's or hers, well, she's just gonna pop off. Augusta's just gonna pop off, and then you pair that with hopefully a Shorekeeper, but you can also get it done with Verena as well. Though make sure your Augusta has higher crit if you're gonna use a Verena with her. Well, that free-to-play team over here, and again, I'm just gonna call it free-to-play because it's relatively low investment and anybody that's free to play can afford it. You just run these guys and you're pretty much like good to go for almost all the content in the game, as long as it's not electro resistant. So yeah, that's just something reliable that's always going to be there, and that's why Augusta remains as one of the most solid picks over here. Augusta naturally has like upgrade options too, where of course you can decide to go in and pull a Yuno as well. But it's fair to say that Yuno has quite a bit less value than Augusta, unless you already have a shit ton of characters on your account. Then Yuno's value grows exponentially. Yuno, in my opinion, kind of is like a premium pick, because if Augusta can get the job done with Mortefi, you're kind of only pulling Yuno to get like more and more performance out of the rest of your roster. As like a standalone, Yuno can get the job done as a sub DPS, and of course as a main DPS, and of course as a support because she has some healing, but she's kind of unnecessary in pretty much every single team she's on. There's really no need to ever get her, but if you already have a bunch of characters and you have a bunch of investment, well, then she becomes a very, very good fun character. She's top rated on like my fun tier list, my fun value list, but it's kind of just like, isn't she replaceable in every single team ever? That's the thing. You can replace her with a cheaper option that still clears. But if you want the highest possible performance, Yuno and Augusta are going to give you the best results in this team. And then Yuno has a lot of usability in things like arrow teams and stuff like that, but it's kind of just like, that's kind of just like it. And so, yeah. Now, let's talk about some DPS honorable mentions, because you're probably going to be upset that they're not there. We've actually talked a little bit about Yuno as a main DPS, right? And this is actually Yuno's like best overall team. You run her with Lene and Mornier. But this is kind of like the issue. If you're running this team, then who are you using with other characters that actually need Toon on their team to function? It's a little bit rough, right? And so this is one of the big reasons for why I don't really rate Yuno that highly, is because yes, she's an amazing main DPS, but chances are you'd rather pair up these two with a unit like this, right? Because Imeth has one of these big issues when it comes to how she works. Imeth doesn't need her signature. She's very, very, very good on EOG over here. She gets the job done, but what Imeth really needs are teammates. And if you don't have teammates for Imeth, you have a very, very, very big problem with getting things done with her. And you might have basically gotten the insight from the previous conversations we had about Chisa, the previous conversations we had about Denya, the previous conversations that we had about Mono Fusion. She requires like a team of like studs. She basically kind of needs 5-star unit friends to function as a character. And if you don't have a cast of like powerful, expensive units with her, she kind of just doesn't feel right as a unit. Because in Toon Rupture mode, you want teammates that interact with Toon Rupture to feel good. And in Fusion Burst mode, you're going to want Denya and Chisa, who are both premium units. The problem with Imeth over here is that while she is an incredibly free-to-play user when it comes to weapons, she's not free-to-play at all when it comes to her actual team comps. And her team comps are way more important to her performance than her weapon. And so I'm not going to go ahead and like say Imeth is a must pull or that Imeth is somebody that you should prioritize. Because the unfortunate thing is that like she doesn't really use Shorekeeper that well. She doesn't really use Verena that well. She really wants like Mornier on her team to do well, or she wants Chisa. And it's kind of like there's not really a lot of area in between. There is, however, one lineup that it's Mono Fusion, right? However, for Mono Fusion, like this is what I'm talking about. This like the supports that you can use here are Mornier or Brand. And they're, again, both 5-star units. So it's basically like every single team she has, it's just all 5 stars everywhere. And so I think Kuro did a fantastic job just in terms of like their overall revenue growing, because they made this character very, very popular in the story. And so a lot of people pulled her, but they kind of did a bit of a bait and switch with it, right? They kind of did like a bait and switch with it where she only works with a bunch of other 5-star units, and they're kind of some of the most specific 5-star units in the game. It's not like she has like a good team, like I said before, with like a Shorekeeper or a Verena, where you could at least like get a discount on one of the units in their team, because, you know, a unit like this is going to be used in so many other places, right? She's kind of just like locked in on having really, really, really expensive units alongside her in virtually every single team composition she has. And so like I'll just put in like, who should I put in here? I'll put in Encore as like the Denya substitute, right? And that's gonna be the future team she has in 3.3. So Imeth is kind of like, her value grows a lot depending on the other units you have in your account. But if you're like starting from ground zero, you don't have Lupa, you don't have Brett, you don't have Mornier, you don't have Lene, good golly gee, she's gonna take a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of just like expenditures to really feel like good in any of the endgame content that you're playing. And this is also one of the biggest drawbacks of Imeth as well. I think she's really shit in Whimpering Waves. I'm gonna be honest. I think her Fusion Burst mode is gonna be a lot better in Whimpering Waves, but like, bro, she feels like some absolute dog shit in her Toon Rupture team, and that's currently like the main viable one that she has. I actually think her Mono Fusion team is better in Whimpering Waves, so she still has options for the game mode. But like with Rupture, bro, it's not good. It's her Rupture team is just like not good in this game mode. And so the end result is that like she's like the TOA assassin, right? She's the TOA destroyer, DPM destroyer as well. But in WuWa, she feels like she has a lot of difficulties in comparison to them. And those other DPSs that I talked about over here, these three, oh, they're so much better in Whimpering Waves than her. It's crazy. They're so much better in Whimpering Waves than her. It's almost insane with all of their team comps. And so these are also characters that function in pretty much all of the endgame modes without a lot of caveats. Imeth kind of feels like she needs either Mono Fusion or her future Fusion Burst team to function in WuWa. And that's kind of like a bit of a restriction, even though her damage is unparalleled in single target. So that's going to be the sort of like dishonorable, sort of honorable mention for Imeth over here. She's incredibly team reliant, and her team reliancy is really, really, really focused on Giga Premium characters, and that's a bit unfortunate, and there's not a lot of reuse of those Giga Premium characters, at least until maybe some future releases come up. The value of Imeth is also going to grow incredibly depending on what Denya does. Or sorry, what Hiyuki does. If Hiyuki's another character, right, that ends up using the sort of like wheelchair duo, the Mornier plus Lene or something like that, then Imeth naturally is going to grow in value too. Because if you plan on pulling Hiyuki and then building out that wheelchair team comp, even though Hiyuki's probably not going to use it as a wheelchair, she'll probably do a fuck ton of damage as well, then naturally Imeth becomes higher value because then you could just pull her, and now you have the fusion team, the fusion Toon Rupture team, and then you have the maybe Glacio Toon team as well. So that's something that can happen as well. It's just, we're talking about it in the current state of the game at the moment, and I'm not going to go ahead and like try to convince you that Imeth is like this crazy, insane value pull, because yes, she's good, really good, in TOA and DPM, but it's also like there are plenty of other characters in the game that get the job done still and don't require as much investment. So that's going to be something for you there. Now, it's time for us to have a bit of a conversation over here, and this is going to be the difficult conversation. It's going to be about sub DPS characters. And oddly enough, I do feel like this anniversary has basically fucking cooked sub DPSs. That's because two of the best ones in the game who support some of the best teams in the game, they're not going to be on the anniversary. Or I really doubt they will. Because Chu Yan is running right now. He's easily the second best sub DPS in the game. He's running right fucking now. And Lene's running in the next half of this patch. So if they just ran in 3.2, chances are, ladies and gentlemen, they're not going to be on the anniversary banners. But you really kind of want both of them. They really, really want both of them. Because guess who wasn't on last year's anniversary banners? All the characters that ran in 2.2. No Cantarella, no Camellia, no Shorekeeper. They ran during 2.2 before the 2.3 anniversary, and then they didn't show up over here. So chances are these characters won't show up either. And I think the three best sub DPS characters in the game at the moment pretty much consist of like these three, right? However, this guy has like 3 meta teams. She's got like potentially an infinite number of meta teams. She already has Luke and Imeth right now where she's clear best in slots, but then she also has, you know, the ability because of the wheelchair composition to support so many others. So Lene's just at the top there in terms of like flexibility. Chuyan's a close second, and then Yuno's kind of just in like a distant third place because Yuno supports Augusta, and then that's kind of like it until you start getting into some ridiculous premium lineups that start approaching Imeth level of investments. Because like these are Yuno's other teams. Just get ready for this. These are Yuno's other teams. She's got this mono arrow one where she heals, so she gets the job done there. Then she of course has a bunch of variants where she has Chakotay on her team, and then an arrow heavy attacker as the third slot, where Chuyan can be like a DPS in this team, and it actually performs very well. And then you have Jian too. Do you see what I meant by she's like a fun character? Yeah, she's like a fun character. Not really like this meta-destroying assassin that like will elevate your account like crazy. She lets you have a lot more fun with other units that you have on the roster. You can't put Yuno with Galbrena. This team is so bad, it's like not... This team really sucks. It's one of the worst uses of both the units that you can have in the game. Let me just say that. Yeah, it's one of the worst uses of both units you can use in the game. You could definitely do it, but it's kind of just like, why the fuck would you? Is the main question. Yeah, do you ever see anyone playing this or seriously suggesting it? It works, but they both have better options. And that's kind of like the reality of it. Another character to bring up when it comes to like being in like the distant third slots are of course going to be these two, Chakotay and Lupa. They're very, very, very strong, but Chakotay requires, right, kind of like that mono arrow lineup, like I mentioned before, with an arrow healer. And so Chakotay is probably higher value than Lupa because even though this is like the cart team over here, Chakotay has the ability alongside Yuno to make all those arrow teams, but I'm not going to like go out here and suggest that people do that. I'm not going to go out here and like suggest people actually run this. She also has one of the strongest teams in the game that goes sustainless by running like Chakotay, Chuyan, Sigrika, but it's also just like the performance of having like SK on the team is so close that it's like kind of almost pointless to run the Chakotay team outside of like Wuthering Waves for fun. And then it's kind of just like otherwise Chakotay is just like a giga premium character so that you can like combine her with Yuno to just like play some fun comps. If you want to do that, go for it. but I'm not going to go ahead and tell you that it's like a main recommendation for any person in this game, because you're kind of just fucking around with Chuyan, or you're fucking around with Jian in the third slot. And these teams are really strong. These teams are really good. And if you're trying to actually like get extra use cases out of this character, this is the best 1.x team in the game, right? It's without a doubt the best 1.x DPS team in the game. You can do it if you want, but I'm not going to go ahead and tell you that it's like a good goal for accounts to have, because these characters, right, it's not like they have like an insane amount of reuse elsewhere. It's like, oh great, you can use Chakotay with Kardathea, but this is you just made this arrow damage team over here, so do you even need Kardathea at this point? And then of course when it comes to, you know, I guess she has like the Augusta team, and that's like pretty much it. Not a lot of reuse. Hopefully you're beginning to see over here why these are like the main conversations in the sub DPS category, because every other sub DPS that might be available, guys, they are so basically like partner locked, it's unreal. These two, for example, you need Zani for Phoebe to work, but Phoebe's not even going to be on the anniversary banner because she's on the second phase, so it doesn't matter. Cantarella needs Frolova to work. Rosia needs Frolova to work. Jeja Jeja's actually probably the most like general use out of all these, oddly enough, right? Jeja needs Carlotta or Jinxie to work. But if you're using Jeja with Jinxie in 2026, you probably have bigger issues than anything else that this guy can help you with. And Yinlin needs Zhang... I don't even know why I brought her up. You can kind of see how the design of all these other sub DPSs, right? They're kind of like some of the restrictions that they have built into their kit is a problem. That's because their outro skill buffs Havoc as well as a damage type. That kind of just means they work with only like 1 or 2 characters. And that's why having these units over here, right? Like the Linneas, like the Yunos, where their outro skills just buff 50% echo skill, 15% all damage, and 25% liberation. And then of course, 50% heavy. That's why they're just inherently higher value. And everyone at this point should probably get to recognizing that. Now, we've covered supports, we've covered DPSs, we covered sub DPSs, and now it's truly time to get into the baits. The characters that I do not recommend at all, unless you really, really, really want to either get baited or you really, really, really like their teams. Oh, sorry. Last character I need to mention over here when it comes to sub DPSs. Lupa. Lupa is without a doubt the character that grows in value the most, depending on the other characters that you have on the roster. Lupa, essentially, if you have other fusion units and you have a character like Mornier or you have a character like Brant, she easily becomes a must pull. And the reason for that is very, very, very simple. When you have Lupa with one of these two, you gain the ability to slot any like fusion DPS in here and it becomes a meta team. You put Imeth in and it's now a meta team. You put in Galbrena and it's now a meta team. Fuck it, you can play Brant as the DPS and now it's a meta team. If you want Lupa and you want to experience mono fusion, then Brant or Mornier both become some high value picks. Brant probably a lot lower than Mornier because Lupa, Mornier, and then a third fusion DPS is pretty much the meta nowadays. But if you already have Brant and you already have invested in him, then it's just as easy as picking up Lupa and then, well, any other fusion DPS to fill out the third slot. And like, God forbid you like have Chang Li or you still feel like pulling her in 2026, but there's a reason why the OG mono fusion team was these three. And guess what? It still clears all the content in the game very, very, very well. It's actually one of the best age teams, I would have to say, especially considering it was completed in 2.4. Lupa, Chang Li, Brant still basically fucks up everything in the game. And just having these two, if they're older investments, well, or really just having him, that's enough of a reason to pull her. And I think everyone can sort of understand that at this point. However, with that in mind, if you don't have one of these two, I'm not sure how I can feel about telling you to pull Lupa. Because it basically all of her buffs like don't work, or her buffs like really diminish in their effectiveness unless you have 3 fusion resonators on your team. And well, there's a lot of fusion resonators, but her teammates, or at least the ones that sustain, so you're not playing sustainless, right? It's kind of required that you pull some 5-star units, because that's where really the only fusion sustains are coming from. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to Lupa. Now, let's have a bit of a conversation and let's start talking about the dishonorable mentions. The ones that you probably don't want to pull that you're likely going to get giga-baited by. A little bit of that. A little bit of Cantarella over here. As well as a little bit of, who should we see over here? A little bit of Rosia. as well as a little bit of a... Yeah. I'm gonna be honest, guys. I'm gonna be honest. We need to have an honest conversation over here. These 3 characters are definitely ones that you should not necessarily be pulling in 2026. And the reasoning for this is quite simple. Cardathea is the most signature-reliant character in the game. From the perspective of, if you don't have her signature, she kind of just doesn't function as a character. And even when you do have her signature, I'm gonna be honest. Remember the dialogue that we had about Chakona before? Chakona isn't really that flexible of a unit. From the perspective of Cardathea needs Chakona. Chakona doesn't really need Cart, but Chakona's only real teams are ones that involve a bunch of other premium units. And while yes, Cardathea does have a rather flexible or like free arrow option with Rover, the only other team that she kind of has is like this. She has 2 options in the support slot, and then 1 option in the sub DPS slot, and then she also needs her signature. Pretty much every other arrow DPS in the game, there's not really that many, right? They're way more flexible, or they use way more reusable characters. And the perspective that I have is that when it comes to Cardathea, yes, she's still strong, but she kind of feels like shit to use in Whimpering Wastes, much like Amith. But she's not going to have, like, this second team that comes out like Amith's Fusion Burst one. And the other reality that we're going to have to see over here is this. Sigrika's kind of just a better character. She kind of just is a better character. And as long as Sigrika's in the game, a unit that, A, doesn't even need her Sig, she can literally just use any of the other signature gauntlets, or, of course, the free Pulsation Bracer, the standard one, and she can still get the job done. Has way more flexible options, right, in the 3rd slot. She can use a Shorekeeper, right? She can also use a Verena as well. She can use both these characters. And then, of course, her best in slot, the one partner that she needs is Chu Yan. We just talked about how Chu Yan supports, like, 2 of the other better, 2 of the other best DPSs in the game. She does that too, where it's not like Chakona over here, where you only support other arrow teams. Chu Yan supports multiple other attributes. And so it's kind of just like, okay, you need Chakona and Cardathea. Great. Chakona is only used in other arrow teams. So it kind of like begs the question of how flexible is this character? Truly, how flexible is Chakona if you've pulled her for Cardathea and then Chakona only does other arrow teams? Do you see what I mean? It's almost like it almost kind of like doesn't make sense. It doesn't even feel like it's a worthwhile investment. That's my personal take. And that's why I don't recommend Cardathea out of all characters. Because think about when you're making Amith's best in slot team. Denya might be like a Chakona, right? Or Denya might have the ability to support multiple elements. But think about Amith's other best in slot team. The one with, I don't know, Lene and Mornier. And Lene and Mornier are used in so many other lineups. It's insane how many other use cases they have. You can put in Luke over here for Spectro. You can put in Yuno for Arrow. You get multiple attribute coverage by investing in Amith's best in slot team. And when you invest in this one, bro, you just are only able to play other arrow teams. I'm somebody that owns every single unit in the game. I have virtually every single character built. And this is the conclusion that I've come to. She's one of the worst investments you can honestly make because all you can make from here are just more arrow teams. And that's kind of just like it. And so we're talking about the must pulls over here. We're talking about the pull value over here, assuming you don't have these units already. And I can't really recommend that anyone build the cart team from ground zero nowadays because characters in the game have simply just evolved. These 2 are Ima's best in slots, and they can be used with so many other attributes, so many other teams, and you just get so much more value out of investing into these characters as opposed to even investing into these. And maybe it's actually a good idea to start pulling Chisa on the anniversary when some of those future kits get revealed. But as of now, like I said before, this is the only team that Chisa has, so it's obviously super low value. But maybe that'll change in the next update. But guess whose value isn't really changing when Chisa's does? Hers! Because she's still going to require Chakona, and you can still use Arrow Rover. However, Chisa's value is going to grow, assuming that you can use Denya in the Fusion Burst team, that's pretty much confirmed, right? With Imith. And then you're also going to be able to use maybe Glacial Chafe in the Hyuki team. Because why would the Japanese DPS, right? The Japanese DPS, why would she not use the Japanese support? You know what I mean? So yeah, that's going to be the main dishonorable mention over here. And naturally, right, we're going to get into some other units that I feel like are going to potentially be mates. Brant probably should not be gone for unless you already have a Lupa, because Mornier kind of gets the job that Brant has done in Mono Fusion, and she just does it better while having more teams outside of it. So he's also very, very, very signature reliant to have any sort of build at all. And I'm saying this as somebody that has one of the best brands probably in the world. And I do a lot of shit with him and he's super fun. But I can also recognize that Mornier basically does his role, does it slightly better, and then also, you know, has the flexibility to be used in Toon teams. Rosia is a one-team wonder with Frolova and is dog shit everywhere else. Cantarella is a one-team wonder with Frolova and is dog shit everywhere else. These units need Frolova, but Frolova does not need them. And so it's kind of just like, you should never be going for these units under pretty much any circumstance, because why would you when they're only used on one team and you're never going to use them anywhere else? And I see some people saying, oh, what about using Rosia with Camellia? Rosia is so bad outside of Frolova teams that Sanhua, a free-to-play, literal free-to-play 4-star, is better than her. Yes, that is how undercooked and dog shit this kit is, where Sanhua is better than Rosia in the Camellia teams. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. And now, for the actual Giga bait round. You should probably just, like, completely skip every 1.x DPS. I know there's not actually that many, but like in case they're available, I don't think they are. You probably just should not pull these guys. I'm gonna be real here. You probably just shouldn't. And the reasoning for this is very, very, very simple. Unless they get some buffs, like they do have in DPM, where their damage increases by, you know, a good amount, or they get some new mechanics in their kit, I just don't really recommend pulling most of these characters. Because the only one that truly has, like, meta-viable teams right now is just Jian. That's it. I guess Chang Li, too, in Mono Fusion. So, these two are, oddly enough, kind of like the only 1.x damage-dealing units that actually can function in endgame content. At least floors 3 and 4 of the Hazard Zone. That's it. It's just these two. I'm not even joking. Everyone else is kind of just doo-doo water. Happy to see somebody try to prove that take wrong, but I think it's universally agreed on at this point. And last but not least, I'll put in my last honorable mention for units that I feel like surprisingly still have value and honestly should probably be on your account, but at a lower priority. And that's going to be this team. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I know, right? Carlotta is old as a DPS. Think about it this way. Carlotta is only like 40 days younger than Camellia. Carlotta released like 40 days after Camellia. Think about it that way, guys. She is an old character. However, she still reliably clears the hardest content in the game. She still reliably clears DPM. She still reliably clears floor 4 and 3 of the Hazard Zone. And while she kind of needs Jeju to be able to get to that performance, it's enough consistency and it's enough power, at least in my opinion, to think about having on your account. I agree. I think these other DPS characters can get it done better, and they can kind of get it done with a bit less budget as well. But Carlotta is easily probably the most comfortable DPS character to play in the game because she CCs enemies, does all of this shit at range, and like kind of just fucks every single hologram in the game, other than I think like the Havatia one, because yeah, she is not able to parry, and that's a bit of a rough restriction to have in that fight. Carlotta also has the incredible bonus of also being a pistol DPS character too. So that kind of makes it where she could also have the same argument as Galbrena, right? Having this free-to-play option, and it basically performs at almost identical levels to her signature. So it's kind of just like, yeah, you can just get it done over there at a budget too with her. Make up for the fact that you kind of do need Jeja on her team to get it done. Similar argument to Galbrena, but I'm not going to be lying and say that, you know, Carlotta deals more damage than Galbrena. I think Galbrena actually does quite a bit more than she does. But this is the thing. It's consistent. It's strong. I've used it since 2.0 and pretty much every single TOA. I know mine is S4, but I make sure to use an S0 one on other people's accounts. And it just gets the job done every single time. And this level of consistency, this level of comfort, and this level of just like, you know, relative strength that's withstood the test of time. I think it's definitely something that pretty much every single player should at least think about pulling, even if they're not going to prioritize it. Because who knows? Maybe you'll get really lucky on your anniversary pulls. Maybe you'll win a 50-50 way earlier than you thought. Maybe you'll get one in like 10 pulls and you're just like, hey, fuck it. Hey, I want to pull somebody for fun. Then this is a good character to go for. But yeah, that is going to be our list of anniversary must pulls. And I know we went through a lot of different units. I know we went through a lot of different character archetypes. But like I said before, the value of these must pulls really do depend on the state of your account, who you actually have on it. And so we kind of just talk through what makes all of these units strong, what kind of conditions you need to make them strong on your account, because there's really only a couple of actual must pulls, and it's mainly just like Shorekeeper because she can be used pretty much everywhere. And the rest of the value of these units, it depends on what you already have, what you want to pull, or what you're going to pull in 3.3 alongside them. And so yeah, hopefully this overview was helpful about who to pull and who not to pull. Let me know what you all thought about this one. Just make sure you skip these two. They're so it's unbelievable. And peace out.